Maya Angelou wrote, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." Welcome back, Equity Warriors, and thanks for tuning in for the special episode in commemoration of 9/11. Shortly before 6 a.m. Pacific time on September 11th, 2001, my dear friend Shirley called me and said, "Turn on the news." She knew I'd be up, getting my own kids ready to go to school and myself ready to teach my own class of sixth graders, and turning on the TV was not my habit. My son was only 9. He didn't fully comprehend what was going on, what we were seeing on the television. My daughter, who was about to turn 15, well, she got it. Unfortunately, she had already witnessed death up close, a violent death. She came to school with me that day and stayed in my classroom. Much of that morning is a blur, and as those of you who are educators, classroom teachers know, on that day, we did what we needed to do. On every day, you do what you need to do to get your learners through the day. And as Maya Angelou so eloquently stated, we most often decide not to be reduced by the events that happen to us. We do what is needed to serve the children in our classrooms. Now, that September, we had fires in the Northern California forest, and the firefighting planes took off from the airport, which is only about 2 miles away from our campus. Water bombers that have this unmistakable sound. It's like a heavy bomber or a C-130 cargo plane. And they were taking off constantly that day with a flight path right over our school. That sound of a heavy airplane not only buzzed our building, but triggered my students every time they heard one. Doing what I needed to do to get my kids through the day, I tried to calm them, telling them that no one is coming to bomb our neighborhood in our modest Northern California town. We were in the hood, deep in the hood. We had no high rises. We were not wealthy. I could not let the events of the day reduce me, because I knew what it would do to those 24 faces that were in my classroom. That was my last year in the classroom. And so as I reflect back on September 11th and the weeks, even the months after, I most fondly recall how we treated one another. My friend Janet got stuck in Boston Logan Airport that morning. She shared with me later on how she had joined other business travelers in the airport, and there were not enough rental cars to go around, so people were gathering and getting to know one another. And she found several other business people. You got your computer bag and your projector. It's 2001, folks. We had to travel with projectors. And they got together and shared a rental car as she drove back to Delaware. On that day, in that moment of tragedy, something special happened. We were all Americans. We shared a common adversary in the 19 people who flew planes into buildings. We all saw the senseless targeting of civilians as unacceptable and unthinkable. If only that sense of community had lasted. It wasn't long before racism once again reared its ugly head, a racism steeped in the American tradition. For a while, it seemed that Black people were embraced as fully American. First time in my life, and I recognized that because it felt so different. But that focus at that time of that uniquely American brand of racism didn't go away. It just shifted to people of Middle Eastern descent. It's not right. It wasn't right. It just was. I recognized it. I felt it then. I have felt it since then and feel it on occasion now. For those of you who don't know, the name Almitra is rooted in the Islamic culture. And after I left the classroom, I, like my friend Janet, sort of lived in airports and hotels working with school systems across the country. And there was a roughly 2-year period of time that I worked almost exclusively with the Detroit Public Schools. Shout out to my friends in Detroit. And so flying every week, typically on a Monday, from California to Detroit, somehow or another, I ended up on the TSA selectee list. Now, Detroit, for those of you who don't know, has like the largest population of people from Iraq outside of Iraq. There's a very large Middle Eastern culture there. And being on the selectee list, name Almitra, flying to Detroit every week, I could not get a boarding pass online. You know, get your phone, you get your boarding pass. Back then, 2001, you logged onto your computer, you got your boarding pass, and you sort of breezed through the airport. Not me. Couldn't get it at the kiosk at the airport. I had to stand in the line and speak to a live agent and show multiple forms of government photo ID. That lasted for quite some time, and it was more than a mere inconvenience. As I said, every single week and sometimes multiple times a week, I was on an airplane. I felt it. I feel it, and I felt it when my daughter, who also has a Middle Eastern name, when she told me during basic training that they nicknamed her Al-Qaeda. Now, yes, she was a kick-ass soldier, but still, she felt it. I felt it with her when she was traveling in uniform and they would double and triple check her Army ID and her driver's license when she went through the airport through security. Not right. 2,977 victims of 19 hijackers that day. Lives lost. I think about the children who've grown up without one or more parent. A trauma that lasts a lifetime, a trauma that I connect with on a very personal level, having lost my father tragically when I was only 7. That pain, that trauma doesn't go away. There is not enough psychotherapy to erase that pain. Their educations were disrupted. Their life trajectories changed. But still, as a society, we haven't changed. As a society, racism, xenophobia, and oppression of black and brown bodies is still as American as apple pie and baseball. They may cloak it in terms like patriot. As they suspend and infringe upon civil liberties, they demonize immigration and immigrants and fear cultural differences to the point that oppression and racism and bigotry have been normalized. I wonder why. Why is it that our acts of solidarity, of compassion, or resilience are so short-lived? Why is it that the trailing effects of racism and xenophobia sparked by 9/11 live on in legislation and policy that harm people, especially the children in our schools, for generations? No, Maya, we cannot control all the events that happen to us. But we do have to decide not to be reduced by them. We can control some. We can almost certainly not be reduced by them. We can control our attitudes, our mindsets, our choices. We do not have to be reduced to being hateful, bigoted people. We do not have to consider that people, because of the color of their skin, are not worthy, should not be welcomed, should not be educated. Let's think today and never forget about the way we came together almost 22 years ago. Never forget how we treated one another as Americans, a common identity, unified. Over the last several years, the quiet hate of racism has only grown louder. It has come into the light, and people are comfortable showing us who they are and the hate they hold. It is making its way into more and more policies that affect our children. And yes, I do still hold out hope that someday that sense of community, of oneness that we showed and shared in the fall of 2001 will surface again. But it won't happen organically. It needs a push. It needs your help. There's a singer, songwriter, poet, novelist from Canada, a man by the name of Leonard Cohen, who said, "There is a crack in everything." That's how the light gets in. And so I believe that we can find those cracks when we get involved, when we stay involved. We let the light in when we vote. When we vote like our lives depend on it. Because certainly there are so many children whose futures, whose lives do depend on the choices we make when we go to the polls. We let the light in when we vote in our local elections, closest to us and our children. We let the light in when we show up at a local school board meeting and find out exactly what's going on and what changes need to be supported and what needs to go away. We let the light in when we advocate through social media. So share this episode. Share all my episodes. Follow me. Connect. Repost. Continue to join me every week. Connect with me on social. The links are down in the notes. Send me your questions, your topics, your requests to info@askdrberry.com. I'll answer your questions, and I'll bring you experts to help address those topics. As always, don't worry about the things you cannot change. Let's work to change the things we can no longer accept. And I'll see you next time.